On behalf of the Nigerian Bar Association, I welcome you to the 2020 Annual General Conference of the NBA. Like the MC said, my name is Eletu from Faculty of Law, Lagos State University. You already know the panelists. Tobiloba Ajayi to my immediate left. Next is Patience Etumudon. Next is Mr. Daniel Owe. And of course, Mrs. Aminat Agbaje. The theme for this session is lawyers with disabilities, strategies for achieving inclusiveness and equality. To be examining this topic are the panelists here. So, I want to throw the first question to Ms. Tobiloba Ajayi. What are strategies for achieving inclusiveness and equality for lawyers with disability? I start with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again, Mr. Moderator, for that question. I think that the first question we should ask ourselves is, when we say inclusiveness, what does that even mean? What is the definition of inclusion? And I always say that in my head, I've simplified inclusion this way. I've said that inclusion is basically the removal of barriers. Removal of barriers to three things: to presence, to participation, and to achievement in any facet of life. So, what does the inclusion of lawyers with disabilities mean? It means that we're thinking, all of us, whether we are colleagues, whether we are bosses, whether we're judges, whether we're litigants, we're thinking, how do we remove the barriers for lawyers with disabilities to be present in all aspects of legal practice? How do we remove the barriers for them to participate in all aspects of legal practice? And how do we remove the barriers that stop them from achieving whatever rank they might want to achieve in the legal profession? And so the strategies then, of course, are going to be diverse, depending on what kind of disability we're removing barriers for. I mean, today, just this afternoon, is a very prime example, and I think we all saw it play out. If you were going to have a panel for lawyers with disabilities, will the first barrier you remove not be the barrier to them even being able to be present in that panel? So if we're starting with even just the barrier to even just where the panel holds, where is inclusiveness there? And so it's about all of us thinking about what barriers exist, because they will be different. I can reel out a list of strategies, but it will not cover everybody. So we all need to begin to think, and it starts with how we see people with disabilities, albeit lawyers with disabilities. Do you see them as equal colleagues, people who have the same rights and responsibilities that you do in the profession? Or people you should just accommodate because? When we begin to think about lawyers with disabilities as equal participants in the temple of justice, we will then think about how we're excluding them in our practices, and then we will be able to think of how to remove those exclusionary barriers. So for instance, we all saw the simple one this afternoon. But it then grows into other things. Even coming to this place itself, the texture, the terrain of the ground, does it work for lawyers with disabilities? If any of us was on a wheelchair, would we be able to wheel ourselves in here? It's things like that. How many of us, when we were in the Nigerian law school, faced the barrier of distances between class and hostel? You didn't think about it beyond to say, oh my God, it's so hot. I can't believe I'm walking this long distance. But your colleague with a disability goes beyond the heat. It's the fact that that distance might be the difference between him being able to make class tomorrow out of just sheer exhaustion. the Nigerian law school has laws about dinners. What happens to people who are, for instance, amputated and don't have two hands? Are we going to be grading them on their ability to use fork and knife when they only have one hand? So these are questions we need to ask. The same thing with practice. I remember enrollment day at the Supreme Court. A lot of us ran up the stairs. We weren't thinking. But for me as a lawyer with a disability, I got there and I remember stepping out of the cab and looking at the sheer amount of stairs I was expected to climb up to get enrolled. And I had to remind myself that this was the culmination of 6 years of hard work. So I needed to pull myself up those stairs. And that was the day I told myself, litigation legal practice is not for me, because if this is what I'm going to have to do every day, no, this cannot work. So if we're going to think about strategies, we need to think about it in our bar branches. When we call bar branch meetings, are we using accessible buildings, or the hotels have stairs? When we do MBA meetings, do we have sign language interpreters for hearing impaired lawyers? What about our visually impaired lawyers? We print everything on paper. Where are the Braille copies? We need to think about the way that our activities and the way that we even practice. So for instance, I've asked this question multiple times and nobody has given me an answer. How many of our courts have sign language interpreters on staff or on retainer? Because not only do we have hearing impaired lawyers, they are hearing impaired litigants. Are we providing for them to be able to access the justice system? Those are the very many strategies for which we can actually begin to move. Because the truth is that the journey to inclusion does not have an end. We will continue to get better as we know better. But we need to begin to take deliberate steps to begin to move from where we are in entrenched exclusionary practices to a place where we are beginning to think of how to remove barriers and ensure that people are able to have access to participate and to also achieve. Somebody has asked me, how many lawyers with disabilities are sons and judges? I've asked them, how many courtrooms are accessible to lawyers with disabilities before you ask them to go to the bench? So how do we remove these barriers? It's up to all of us to think about, because it will look different in our jurisdictions.
Thank you, Mrs. Ajayi.
Thank you very much.
Now, he has set the tone for the discussion, looking at the first leg of the theme as strategies towards achieving inclusiveness for lawyers with disabilities. Now, I want Mr. Daniel Onwe, the president of Association of Lawyers with Disability, to examine the second leg of the theme, equality. How does the MBA, or how do we achieve equality for lawyers with disability?
Thank you very much. The starting point for equality is actually inclusion. It's when we actually achieve that there will even be the room to start talking about equality. And I'll start by saying that inclusiveness is all about openness of the mind, as against being narrow-minded and thinking that life is all about yourself and how you do things. It's all about open-mindedness to know that there are other people who are different from you, who do things differently, and making provision to accommodate their peculiarity. And this goes across board. In other words, in everything we do, we need to think, who are other people who will be affected by this? Like, let's say the conference that Toby has referred to. It means that every aspect of the conference, we have to have at the back of our mind that the attendees are not just those who are walking with their two legs okay, but that there will be people who will be wobbling on crutches like myself, and there are people who will be rolling on wheelchair. How do we accommodate them? How do we make it accessible to all of them. So it's when there is inclusion, whereby everybody can come to the table, then we can talk of equality. Because in the absence of inclusion, it can't be equality. Because here it means that in the conference, for instance, everybody should have equal enjoyment of the conference. But when accessing just the platform alone is a torture to a person with disability, he's not enjoying it equally with others. Or when he'll have to labor from the gate to trek all the way to the venues of event, they are not enjoying it on equal basis with others. So to achieve equality, we have to make inclusion so that everybody will be on equal basis at the table. And whatever that it's made available, everybody have access to it and enjoy it on equal basis with others. And it goes across to other things, even to the area of practice, like she pointed out. If, for instance, one lawyer will have to get down from his wheelchair and wobble, maybe crawling to access the courtroom, while the other lawyers will walk into the courtroom in dignity, there can be equality. But it is when, for instance, the courtroom is made equally accessible to others, to all lawyers, so that every lawyer accesses the courtroom in dignity, then there will be equality. And it goes even to the training of the legal training, how we all were trained from the university to the law school. Do we access the library equally? No. There are law students with disability who never got access, even for one day, to the library of their school. I had an experience. In my own case, I could wobble to the second floor of the library, but I know another mate of mine, though 2 years my junior, whose disability is worse than mine. She couldn't even access the library at all, not to talk of. So in that case, there is no equality. So to achieve equality, we have to think inclusively in every aspect of the things we do, starting from the bar, MBA branch meetings. Are the venues accessible so that everybody, whether or not you are working on crutches or wheeling on wheelchair, have equal access to it? And even our proceedings, is it such that lawyers who are deaf could follow by way of provision of sign language interpreters? And even court proceedings, do we have sign language interpreters in the courts so that a person who is a lawyer who is deaf can equally follow proceeding on equal basis with others? So it goes across board.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Owe. Thank you very much. The first speaker has spoken about access to facilities in the courtrooms, in the MBA conferences. That point has further been adumbrated by the second speaker. But I want Mrs. Etumodon, I got it, patience, I got it. Yeah, I wanted to look at legal framework. Is there any law that takes care, generally speaking, of persons with disabilities in Nigeria before we narrow it down to lawyers with disability? Let's start from persons generally. Is there any legal framework?
Good afternoon. We have the recently enacted Discrimination Against Persons law. That's disability law. That's what we will call it. It was passed into law in 2019. And the law makes provisions for persons with disabilities, not just lawyers. So, of course, lawyers are also included amongst persons who have disabilities. There are certain provisions in the law that protects, I would say that provides for specific needs of persons with disabilities, especially as it relates to structures. It says that all structures must be made accessible to persons with disabilities. But the unfortunate thing is that, as far as I'm concerned, implementation is the problem right now, because the law it has been enacted, but it's resting in the sense that it will not take effect until after 5 years. Now let's look at it this way. How many public buildings are being reconstructed as we speak? Because the 5 years expires next year, if I'm not mistaken. So how many public buildings are being readjusted or rebuilt to fit the specification of the law? How many persons can access these buildings? We're talking about banks with the security, this thing, yes, put there. How can a wheelchair user access it? Then coming to this place, we're talking about laws now. I practically had to climb this place with the help of 2 persons for me to access this podium. This one just kind of amplify what we have been talking about. You cannot talk about disability law or talk about removing these structures, removing these biases or these restrictions that makes it impossible. It is demeaning. For instance, like they've said, a lawyer goes to court, for instance, and you are going with your client. Your client is walking behind you, and then you just get to the front of the court, and you find out that it's a 2-story building, or it's just a 1-story, or it has some few steps. And you have to come down from your wheelchair, if you're a wheelchair user, and crawl. The first thing is that the client will even lose hope in you first. Because let's ask ourselves here, how many of us will want to brief a client? Who will do that? Who will not want to do it? The client will first lose trust in you, like, can this person even argue my case? That's the first thing. So we have to remove some of these things. The laws are there. And I've always said it. It is not laws, enactment of laws that is our problem in this country. It is the implementation of those laws. How well can we implement these laws? Another section of the law provides that 5% for employment in public institutions should be reserved for persons with disabilities. This law has been in existence for 4 years. Have we heard that the federal government or any of the MDAs of the federal government did employment and they reserve 5% of that provision for persons with disabilities? I can assure you that the answer is no. Or the states. How many states? I can only remember that my state, at least my state tried, they've done it once, when they gave 5% to persons with disabilities, but that's been it. We've not heard of anything like that. So 5% is supposed to be reserved for qualified persons who are capable and who can handle this. So there are other provisions like that. The law also talks about a free education for children in primary and secondary schools. How many schools have such facilities to cater for children with special needs, for instance? How many teachers can teach Braille in schools, primary or secondary? How many teachers are trained in special needs, for instance? The law also tells us about free medical facility for persons with disabilities. How many hospitals have you been able to walk into and they tell you the treatment is free? Let's use our government hospitals, for instance. We have them all over, spread across the country. I know I've been to some government hospitals and I have had to pay, even though I'm a person with disability. So these laws are there. But the unfortunate thing is that we have always acted on the other side of the law. We do not lack laws, we have them. But do we implement them? That is where the question comes.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Patience Setimodo. Now, you have told us about the enabling law that takes care of the welfare, the health needs, the social needs, the economic needs of persons generally with disabilities. And that includes lawyers with disability. Now, I want to ask Madam Mrs. Aminat Agbaje, with respect. You are the president of Federation of International Women's Association. I have tried to do a perusal of the legislation. Now, what is your association doing to ensure partnering with the National Commission for Disabilities, for National Commission Against Persons with Disability? What are you doing? Are there lawyers with disability in your association? What are you doing, ma?
All right. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, colleagues. First and foremost, I'd like to say yes to your direct question. that as members of the International Federation of Women Lawyers, we have lawyers, we have members who are living with disabilities. Josephine is one of us, and we have pockets of other colleagues who are also living with disabilities. But first and foremost, like you know, the International Federation of Women Lawyers, our objective is to protect, preserve, and promote the rights of indigent women and children, inclusive of lawyers and persons living with disabilities. So at the point of advocacy, the International Federation of Women Lawyers is at the forefront of advocating for the rights of persons living with disabilities, particularly women. This we do because we know that without the legal framework, it is difficult to enforce the rights of persons living with disabilities. And therefore, we advocate that in implementing the already existing laws that we have, in implementing the legal framework, that let there be political will from the government to be intentional and deliberate in giving life to those laws that are existing. Like one of the speakers has said that in Nigeria, we do not lack laws, but if we are to implement 0.0 of the laws that we already have to ensure that we give life, that we give existence, to persons living with disabilities, we would have done half of the work. And how do we do that? We do that by inclusion. And when you're talking about inclusion, it means that from the drawing board, that you have to include persons who live with persons who are living with disabilities in the thought process. For instance, in organizing this conference or in building courtrooms, if you have someone who is on the drawing board, they would tell you from the beginning that in your planning, this is what you should plan. For instance, in talking about this conference, one would expect that since there was a session for lawyers living with disabilities, there would be small cars that will pick them from the gate to where their sessions are and to other various sessions that they would want to attend. But you see that the same way that lawyers who are able-bodied, and lawyers who are living with disabilities are struggling, to go from one a session to the other with so much difficulty. That is what we are all experiencing. And a typical example is that we all converged and had a small meeting before we came here. And it took us about 20 minutes, yes, to walk from that place to this place. And those who were coordinating this session didn't even know this place they couldn't say that, oh, this is the room. But we have to go and look for the room. So for me, anything you are discussing about persons with disabilities without persons with disabilities is not for them.
Thank you very much, madam.
Because if you are discussing anything for them, they have to be on the table.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agbaje. I think at this juncture, we want to take questions from the audience. I know that I have seen, on our way here, I have seen people, presumably lawyers with disabilities, also walking into the hall. So questions from them, and also persons with able-bodied persons too. Please, can you?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. We also have some questions from our online audience, but at the moment we'll start with those of us that are present. So we'll go roll by roll. Okay. So,
There are quite a number of persons wanting to talk or ask questions.
Pointing to me. Good afternoon, colleagues.
Afternoon.
My name is Asia Ahmad El-Rufai. I'm the chairperson, Lawyers with Disability Forum of the Nigerian Bar Association. Mine is more of a comment and a general observation that we've made so far, and a solicitation for support from members so that we can push forward the agenda. I'll start by being very grateful to the outgoing president, Olu, for even thinking about creating a forum within the NBA to cater for the needs of lawyers with disability. It is honestly a very good thing to do, because previous regimes have not thought about it. However, we were inaugurated, we were given clear terms. I am a member of the NEC, Patience is a member of the NEC, and yet we kept pushing and pushing for simple things as RAPs for our members to be able to climb. Otherwise, we make the place accessible. We asked for, 3-4 weeks to the time. We kept asking for passes, ordinary passes, buses that will carry people to the places, just like my sister Amina has said, but we didn't get the support. So I'm not complaining per se. I'm complaining but not complaining per se, because the first step has been taken. We have been recognized. We have been given a voice, and that is why this voice is now talking. Previously, we can't even talk. So the laws in Nigeria, like she pointed out, are there. It's not that we don't have the laws. The provisions, beautiful, wonderful. But when we went to meet with the secretary of the Nigerian Disability Commission, some of the things he said were very heartbreaking. There is a commission that has been created, but has not been empowered. And this happens in every facet of our lives. We grandstand, we make talks, we speak, we say, oh, we want to include, oh, we want to add, oh, we appreciate the fact that people have these issues, and we want to bring them close to us. We bring them on one hand and we push them down with the other hand. That has to stop if we are sincere in our quest. And it should start with the NBA. It should start with the NBA. We are honorable people. We are people that people look up to. We're people that people come to guide them. Yet, we grandstand in a lot of things, and we are not sincere. With all due respect, thank you very much.
We'll take questions from the next person. At the end of this session, we shall be making recommendations to the executives of the NBA to forward them to the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. Yes, can we have your name and then questions?
Thank you very much. Yes. Good afternoon, all. My name is Boyega Folabi. I'm from Ado-Ekiti branch of the NBA. I'm a lawyer with disability, particularly with visual impairment. I want to first of all appreciate NBA for this session. It's a voice that we have agitated for over time in all facets. So it's actually a thing of joy for us that we're having this session. But in addition, I want to just make one or two comments, not really a question. As regards issue of inclusion of lawyers with disability, like the panelists have said, it has actually affected persons with disability in the exclusion of persons with disability. It's one thing we see on a daily basis, ranging from our training in our different institutions, the way our faculty of laws across the country are designed. It seems not to be, if you go through faculty of laws across different universities in Nigeria, most of them are beautifully built, good looking and attractive, maybe because of the requirement of Council of Legal Education and National University Commission. But I'm looking for a time when the Council for Legal Education and National University Commission will include accessibility to faculty of laws before those faculties could be accredited. See, we should take these things beyond rhetorics. Let's go into practical terms. NBA should help us to move such a move. The faculty of laws that are not inclusive the study of law in those faculties should be disaccredited until they comply with the provisions. The truth about it is, disability should not be seen as a problem of persons with disability, without being emotional or being sentimental here. A lot of persons with disability you see around here do not bargain for disability. And I must tell us the truth this evening, that anybody that is still existing may not avoid disabilities. Because those of us with it would not negotiate for it. And of course, we are not blaming God for it. Because disability is not the worst thing that can happen to anybody. So I want a situation whereby we take disability beyond helping person with disability.
Thank you, sir. Just have 30 seconds more.
Okay,
30
now,
seconds more.
to run it off. Now, living education. In time of employment, all these things we are talking about, no matter the availability, everything you make available for person with disability, if person with disability are not employed, are not empowered, employment in otherwise, it's going to be an issue. A lot of persons with disability are trained today, struggle to train themselves because, of course, the facilities are not even there. All our law depends more on books. Books are not available in Braille. Even the ICT ones that have been available for...
Thank you, sir. We are constrained by time. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your contribution. Please, the next person. Give the mic to her, please. Yes. Okay.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Just 2 minutes, madam. 2 minutes.
Yes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Winifred Talking. I'm from Lagos branch. My question is, so in all the discussions I've heard so far, our mind has actually been set, our view of disability has actually been centered towards physical disability. So we have, what is the position of the law of what, in this session now, what is the position of the law and what are we doing to make policies as regards including persons living with cognitive disabilities, chronic illnesses, including genetic disorder. For example, myself, standing, I'm living with sickle cell disorder, but it is not physical. However, nobody knows that I've done a hip replacement. And I was passionate about litigation, but I had to settle down and do like commercial. I had to stop litigation because I had a very terrible experience in 2019. So dealing with stress, for example, our needs as disability, persons living with disabilities are different. For example, Toby's needs might be different from mine. I don't know how to manage stress. And this annual general conference is an example. Different timings too, like allowing people to stand for how many minutes?
Madam, 30 seconds, we are constrained by time. Yes. 30 seconds.
So my question is, what is the plan? Like, how do we include some forms of disabilities in disability? And then the second one is, what is the world doing, like, for example, to include disability as regards disability. Like, for example, chronic illness is not recognized. Sickle cell disability is not recognized in our laws as disability.
Okay,
What is the law doing to put that, to ensure that this type of inclusion is included?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The point is well made. Invisible disability. Yes. The panelists are going to address that. The next person, please. Okay. You want the panelists to address that?
Yes, please. Yes. The questions from the online Hoover app. Please.
Okay, please, gentlemen, we have our online listeners who are also joining in this session online. They have posted to us some questions. I'll just read the questions out. Just one will answer them. Question 1: will it not be possible for NBA to partner with the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, and Social Development, which has a department that deals with people with special needs, to further address the issues of lawyers with disabilities? Who is going to take that? Please. Thank you very much, Patience. Yeah, let Patience take that. Probably take this one. Thank you very much, Patience. Please take this one.
Thank you. The NBA has created a forum, which is the NBA Lawyers with Disabilities Forum. And so far, through the chairperson of the forum, Mrs. Asia Ahmed Erufai, we've been doing some advocacy visits. We visited the executive secretary of the Disabilities Commission, and we also have lined up plans to visit relevant agencies and bodies, including the Minister for Humanitarian Services, the DGs of the law school, as well as other agencies and MDAs that are necessary for us to interface with, to ensure that some of these things are brought to, being, like us partnering with them, and to get us to inform us to. We are also planning a conference, a national conference in December. Hopefully, in December, we're going to have our national conference where some of these topics will be x-rayed exclusively within the time frame that we can allocate to it. So yes, we're actually making efforts to see that issues of disability is brought to limelight, that it is on the where it is supposed to be, where the whole world is seeing it, and everyone is acting on it and seeing it as a matter of emergency. It's supposed to be a state of emergency for us because we have so many persons on the streets begging. We need to remove them from the streets. And how do you do that? Through empowerment. And how can you empower them? We don't want peanuts. We don't want charity. Persons with disabilities are not charity cases. They are persons who want to work. They are persons who want to do things.
Thank you very much for your very intelligent answer to that question. One member of the audience also asked a question about, what we see. You see us coming, visible disability. We have to struggle to climb the staircase. I have a prosthetic on my left leg. Well, doesn't matter. But then there are persons with invisible disability. It's not apparent. You can't see them. But then they are disabled. They are disabled medically and clinically. Toby Loba wants to address that question now, please.
So thank you so much for that question about invisible disabilities, because interestingly, earlier today, I was talking to Barrister Dan about how we never address sensory disabilities whenever we talk about disability issues. So we don't talk about sensory processing disorders or neurodevelopmental issues. But the truth is that, and that's why we need to think, when we think about inclusion, again, like I said, it needs to go beyond thinking about it as a physical disability issue. We need to think about it as a barrier removal issue. The question has to be, what are the barriers that exist irrespective? And that's why I said we cannot, when we talk about strategies, it's not about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has to be what is the specific barrier for this person. Because like you said, the barriers for you as someone with sickle cell are not the barriers for me as someone with cerebral palsy. So it's about us working with people with disabilities as people and saying what are the barriers that exist for you. The fact that you've worked with one person with a disability does not mean that you know how to work with all people with disabilities. Because the barriers that the first person you worked with had will not be the same barriers the next person has. And so it's to treat people with disabilities as individuals and to believe them when they say that they're disabled. Because for some weird reason, we've somehow associated disability with physical impairment for so long that when we can't see it, we think that people are faking. So if somebody says, oh, I don't feel well, or I need to use a wheelchair for this, they're like, oh, but you can walk. The truth is that we need to believe people when they say that they're impaired and then give them the accommodations and the modifications that they need to excel.
Thank you very much, Toby. Thank you very much for that elucidating answer to the question from the WOPA app. Thank you very much. Now, the second question goes thus from Chioma Linda Ekene. It goes thus. How can our courts be structured to accommodate lawyers with disabilities? I think that question has been answered by almost all the panelists. You want to quickly, just 30 seconds? Well, Madam, yes. You want to answer that? Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay, I think to give credence to our discussion this afternoon and to ensure that it is no tokenism, arising from this session, what the MBA should do is to empower the session to engage all courtrooms and public buildings so that they can be accessible to persons living with disabilities. I think that if we do that, it will be a good starting point. It will show that even amongst ourselves, because charity begins at home, that lawyers are thinking of the welfare of their members.
Thank you very much, Madam. We have another question. Well, we have another. Yes, please. Let's have a question.
Good afternoon.
Just 1 minute, please, because we have to take others.
Yakubu, my question is connected to that young lady,
yes.
Invisible disability.
Yes.
I was going through some research and I found out that we have a mental health bill, and the bill that is in force is Lunacy Act. So for us to cater for those that are with mental disability, what are lawyers going to do about the bill, the mental health bill that is in the House? Are we going to push for it? How are we going to influence the passing?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, one of the panelists would like to take that to respond to your question. Mr. Daniel, Mr. Onwe, please. Did you get a question?
Yes,
please.
I did. Well, mental health is a part of disability. And to start with, the Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Act makes specific provision for mental health. And it provides that those patients with mental health issues are entitled to free medical treatment in all public health institutions. Now, what's to be done? The MBA, I think, should champion the implementation of the Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Act, as well as other relevant laws that have to do with persons with disabilities. So, MBA with its strength, and MBA, when the MBA coughs, Nigeria sneezes. So if the MBA should indeed throw its weight behind the implementation of that law, it will definitely cascade into better medical attention for persons with mental disability.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maybe I should, okay, can we take 2 more questions? Time is against us.
We can take one more. One more intervention.
Use your discretion. One more. Thank you very much. One more. Just one more question.
Thank you very much. I want to congratulate the Association of Lawyers Living with Disability. For me, number one strategy is what we are doing here. You are lawyers and you know the law prohibiting discrimination against people living with disabilities. So it is your responsibility to ensure that this law is not just there, but it is proactively implemented.
Thank you very much.
I happen to work with civil aviation, and I want to say something, and it is still your responsibility, because you find out that there are so many associations out there of people living with disability. So much so that in a week, we got 3 visitations from people living with disability. So I want to call on you as lawyers that you should ensure that you come together so that when you speak concerning the law that is in place, people will listen. There's a 5-year moratorium for MDAs to ensure that their structures are complying with what it says so that all people living with disability are taken care of. It is the responsibility of the National Commission of People Living with Disability to take this up. We should go beyond rhetorics, just like we said. The bold step to take is to ensure that we match words with action.
With action. Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. We'll go beyond rhetorics. Thank you very much for that beautiful contribution. We'll take just one last question from the audience.
Thank you. It's not
Thank
a
you very much.
question, but it will ride on
Comment.
what madam
Okay.
has said, yes. I want to ask you, panelists, why did you agree to climb the stage?
Thank you. Well,
Why? Wait, sir. Because we are insensitive. Let us be fair. Most of us do not have disabilities. So it's very easy to overlook the minority. And so if you had refused, not in a bad way, that it's going to be a challenge for me, we would need the seats. I hear that the camera people said something about their camera. So are the cameras more important than you? So you have to help us to be able to be conscious.
Thank you,
of your
madam. Thank
needs.
you very much. We had, you want to respond? We had that audio, but we had to persuade some of the panelists to come to the podium. They were very reluctant to show that, but well, just talking. Okay, she wants to respond. Yes, please. I want to give it to her because she actually, expressed a reservation about coming to the podium. Okay, just 30 seconds each.
I want to respond to that. Now, it is possible for us to just say, no, we are not going. In fact, initially, she said, she insisted that she wasn't going to climb the podium. But I said, how do we pass this message across? How would you understand what I'm going through if I do not struggle to pass through this place? You saw me struggling, and you know it is difficult for me to pass through barriers like this. These are the barriers. I had to tell her, please come and carry me across this place. In fact, I'm supposed to have fallen down, so that you understand.
So sorry. 30 seconds, please. 30 seconds.
And thank you for asking that question. And I'm sorry, but I'm way past struggling Olympics with anybody. The truth is that, like you said, we are generally an insensitive people. And I was totally against coming up the stage. It's important that if you say that you're including people with disabilities, then you should think about what their barriers would be and remove them. But like she said, we made a unilateral decision as a group to come up the stage so we could actually show you what it looked like in real life, as opposed to if you read it in a book.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, I crave the indulgence of the organizers of this session. I want to say something. We're talking about Disabilities Act. Madam spoke about their encounter with the secretary to the National Commission for Disabilities, Persons Against Disability. He said that the replies from him was heartbreaking. But I believe that as lawyers, our first duty is to give direction to society. And we should be very brave and bold about it. I am a university teacher. I was disengaged about 3 years ago, but not on ground of my disability. I had an accident and my leg was amputated. About 13 months after I moved to the official quarters, they sacked me. Because COVID was in existence then. So I could not finish my PhD program. But I wrote them. I said, no, I'm not going to take this. Because if you don't give vent to the law, there are aspects of that law, of the Disability Act, that requires the commission to act. But then there are other aspects that require us to express, to give vent to it. We have to. So I wrote to the Governing Council that, look, this is what Disability Act says, and it's a criminal offense to do this against me. So when they convened, they had their meeting, I was reinstated back on my job. So if you don't, yes, and I'm even very proud of some of my students. They sued the university. Honestly, they sued them. I'm very proud of Nigerian Bastion. They gave me a sum of money to take care of myself. So if you don't act, if you're not brave about it, it's not about physical progress. It's about intellectual. It's about mental. It's about how brave you are. You have to give direction. If you don't give it, nobody will help you. Thank you very much. Now, on a last note, okay, Madam wants to talk. Okay, no, okay. Another person, well, yes. I know it's going to be exciting, stimulating session. Just 30 seconds. We are constrained by time.
Even 1 minute. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to appreciate my CVP and my sisters and my brothers over there. My name is Mrs. Phil Neji, the immediate past chairperson of FIDA Lagos. Just to collaborate with my CVP, because FIDA is really doing a lot with respect to persons with disability. And presently, something is also making it to work further, because under NBA, I'm the subcommittee chairperson for persons with disability under our welfare scheme. So all these things we have been talking about, we have identified them as basic issues because we have known and seen that there are a lot of lacuna. And like she rightly observed, that inclusiveness has to do with barriers. And it's only when we identify these barriers, different barriers, then we'll be able to know how to, go along with them. For Mr. Owen, my brother, I'm sure he will remember me, immediately after the lockdown, persons with disability happens to be the first group FIDA went to, align with. We shared palliatives and also listening to them with respect to how to handle their cases. And they were very happy. I went down to Ikorodu. Mr. Owen, you remember? Beautiful. So until I finished my leadership, we kept working with persons with disabilities. And then under the NBA, we have been able to find out that they don't really have good platform to handle all these issues. And those are the things that we are now coming up with as recommendations, RAMs, in all the courts. We have started the work in a way to pay courtesy visits to the Chief Justice of Lagos, and then go to the courts, talk about the issue of parking space for them, the issue of toilets, a lot of things, and then the buildings, and the penalty, because we need to make sure that the laws are effectively implemented, because that's how to drive home the point. Thank you very much.
Take just 30 seconds for each of the panelists to talk, to make just 30 seconds, recommendations to the NBA, the government, on what the lot of lawyers with disabilities should be. Just 30 seconds, please. Mr. B, please. 30 seconds.
All right. So, quick wins for the NBA following this forum. The first thing should be that the NBA needs to think about including people with disabilities. And when I say including, I mean listening to the voices of people with disabilities in the planning of all its activities, both at branch level and at national level going forward.
Thank you very much. Patience. Thank you very much.
Disability issues, handling it is like where you take a pregnant woman to the labor ward, to the labor room. You leave her there. She's one that will put to bed, not you. She will go through all the pains. You will see her going through the pain. You can't take the pain upon yourself. You cannot plan without them. Include them in every plan so that it will work out well. And consider they are not charity cases, like I've said. Give them, when they are qualified, give them that job. When they need to be there, let them be there. Don't seclude them. Such segregations work havoc. It causes some kind of mental health issues on its own. Thank you.
Daniel, 30 seconds.
Well, NBA thankfully has established the Lawyers with Disability Forum. I urge the NBA to empower that forum and to listen to that forum, as the forum will be making very key suggestions to it. And one thing about disability issues, it's actually not something that's a favor we are doing persons with disability. It's actually a social security mechanism that you are building for the benefit of everybody. Because not all the people who are able-bodied, so to speak, today will be able-bodied in the next 10 years. The people who are disabled today were not disabled in the time past. And most importantly, anybody who is praying for longevity, which every one of us is praying for, age has a disabling effect. Thank you.
We go to Madam for on the last note.
Okay.
30 seconds.
Okay. My parting words will be, and also a recommendation to the Nigerian Bar Association, that to replicate this body in our branches. And when we replicate this committee in our various branches, we should ensure that in every executive of the branch of the Nigerian Bar Association, you have a lawyer living with disability on the executive. And we also stem it up to the national executive to ensure that at least a lawyer living with disability is on the national executive. If we do that, then at every time we are planning anything or anything is discussed, the interest of lawyers living with disabilities will be fully implemented.
Thank you very much, Madam. Thank you very much, Madam. On that note, before I hand over to Mr. Stephen, I want to thank members of the audience for your very intelligent responses. The session has been very, very stimulating intellectually. We thank you very much on behalf of the National Executive of the Nigerian Bar Association. I hand over to Mr. Stephen.
Thank you so very much, our moderator. We are very grateful to all our distinguished panelists for making it up here and giving this topic a robust intervention. Please, before we take our group photograph, may I have the honor and privilege to invite on the stage Mrs. Asia Ahmed El-Rufai to assist us with the presentation of gifts to our able panelists on behalf of the Nigerian Bar Association. Mrs. Asia Ahmed El-Rufai is the Chairman, Lawyers with Disability Forum of the NBA. Please, we can actually do better. Thank you. So I crave your indulgence to start with our moderator, Mr. Shakiru Eletu.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of the MBA and specifically on behalf of the Forum for Lawyers with Disability, we want to thank you very much for a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, we also invite our able panelists, Mr. Bilala. Okay, we can actually move towards. Please. It's okay, we can do that. Thank you.
My sister, I feel you. Thank you very much. You've spoken well. You've raised more awareness than we have in a while. And I pray and I hope that we'll continue to collaborate. And I hope that all of you will continue to support us as we bring inclusion to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
My able secretary, without you, the forum will not work. She is full of energy as you see her. She is the one that actually moves the forum. And she is the one that whatever we've achieved today has been able to push it and to make it happen. Thank you, Patience. My president, please sit down. My president is also a member of the forum, and his experience, his exposure, and the work he has been doing so far for people living with disability has actually helped us to, achieve the little that we've been achieving so far. And I'm sure that he would continue to support us, being a member of the forum. Thank you, sir. Very grateful. My president, my sister, and my elder sister, one of the best human beings that I know, my chairperson, my leader, we thank you. You've been very supportive of women lawyers, and you've been quite supportive of the forum. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. On behalf of the MBA, I want to thank each and every one of you that is here. The hall is quite empty, which shows the discrimination that we all feel. I'm sorry, I'm a blunt person. Please, next time we have an event, we want everyone to come so that you could see that we can, you know, we have the ability to contribute. We're not charity case like my secretary said. We're not. We just want an opportunity to live like every other person. And it takes very little. It takes very little. The moment your conscience says, this person may not have the ability that I have, but may have the ability that I do not have. So we should be able to work together as partners, because sometimes people with physical disability are the most able intellectually. And then you can see people that have physical ability may have mental disability. So it's a partnership. Let the world love itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, we are very grateful.